Um,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is the Greg Chapman Show and is mainly meant for facilitators and trainers conducting workshops virtually or face-to-face on any kind of behavioral topic, from leadership to self-awareness to high-performing teams and so forth. The idea of this conversation is to help trainers, facilitators, instructional designers with techniques or with changing their mindsets or giving a view of the different mindsets out there, busting many facilitation myths. Even tips and tricks find their way in here. And all of this from the best in class facilitators, the best in class, sometimes HR heads, L&D heads, CEOs, but with a view of facilitation, people who have either been a part of many facilitation workshops or who are great facilitators, right? Today, of course, we have someone who has been facilitating for more than 15 years, and his name is Bharat. So he's going to be Bharat Babbar. He's going to be our guest today. And Bharat, before this, I mean, in his previous role, he was a partner and the chief operating officer at Maynard Lee Associates, working with teams, all sorts of leadership programs. And like I said, he's been at it for about 15 plus years now. He's also studied acting and made films in LA, working with different kinds of actors from around the world. Acted in numerous plays, films, TV, and commercials. And I think that's what we're going to be tapping into today. Theater and applied theater, and how applied theater can be used in facilitation. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, we've also had Bharat on the show before, and it was a treat last time. Not just for me, but also for a lot of our viewers. Got plenty of comments, lots of learning. So welcome to the show, Bharat.
Thank you, Greg. I must say, I feel no pressure with everything that you've just said.
Yeah.
And there's one thing, sorry, that I just have to say it out loud, otherwise I feel so guilty. I was the CEO and partner of Maynard Lee Associates India, and especially run under the name Life Strategies Human Care Private Limited. They're a UK-based company, and if they ever got word of this, that I'm calling myself the CEO of the UK chapter, Bapre. I don't think I feel okay, but that's all right.
Thank you for pointing that out, Bharat. Thank you so much. Today we're talking about applied theater and its place in facilitation. So, Bharat, if you could, maybe open it up by saying, what is applied theater? Is there a difference from theater and applied theater? And then, of course, how can we use it in facilitation?
I think, and this is purely my own point of view, but I would imagine applied theater is a way of sort of creating that distinction, because when we hear the word theater, I think the instant connection that we make with is the idea of, say, entertainment, in the sense that there's something on stage, something's going to be performed, there's an audience that's going to be observing it. And I think it creates that connection. But applied theater in itself, I feel, is how the process of what goes behind, say, putting out production or theater itself, how that process in its way, from a philosophical perspective, just has so many great benefits to it, and the ability to apply it in different aspects of life. But if you really ask any theater practitioner, I would imagine theater is a lot like life. It's representative of life in that sense. So when we say applied theater, I think it's really the application of it in forms that are other than entertainment. And it's probably social development, education, in this case, behavior, looking at leadership, collaboration, teamwork, etc., etc. So yeah, I think that's what I would mean.
Social development too. Could you just maybe just take a little on an aside. What does that mean, applied theater and social development?
So I think one really great aspect of theater, and I'm not the most credible person to talk about it, is an aspect of theater called theater of the oppressed. And so there's a lot of literature around it. Augusto Boal is one
From
of the.
Brazil, right? From Brazil, it was developed in Brazil, was it?
I wish I knew more information. One of the things I'm really bad is sort of going back into the depth or the historical context of things. But it's something that I've picked up along the way.
What did you call it? Sorry, I missed the name.
Theater of the oppressed.
Okay.
In fact, in Delhi also, I'm trying to remember.
Augusto Boal, yeah, it's a theater, describes theatrical forms of the Brazilian theater practitioner in the 70s, initially in Brazil. Yeah, okay.
A lot of it focuses on social reform. So you're looking at areas, classes of people where there is oppression. And it sort of gives them a platform to raise their voice and communicate, and also for their voice to get heard. I think in some cases, revolutions have happened because of this. In fact, I from there, if I sort of segue into a little bit of education, one of the most familiar aspects of it is street plays, Nukkar Natak. You pick up social themes, and organizations, governments use a platform of street play to create education and awareness.
And awareness, yes. I have seen this being done. Yes, yes, yes. It comes back to me. Yes, I've seen a couple of these street plays happening in Gurgaon, India. So, yeah, certainly a lot of awareness raises your curiosity, and rather than just plainly telling you something and putting it across, this is good, this is bad, arrests your attention in the middle of, whatever you're thinking, doing. And I've seen this, yeah. Okay. So taking theater and applying it to aspects of life other than just entertainment, right? Yeah.
Is my simple way of saying.
Yeah. It's like fun is serious business, sort of a thing. Okay. So where do you use it in a workshop?
How? I think for everything, be it leadership, communication, teamwork, it's, how do I put it? Example, let's imagine you have a vertical in an organization or a team, and it could be a new team, and therefore you need more chemistry within them, or it could be an old team that's really just sort of reached a stage where people are now working in silos. It's a lot more individual centric. There are smaller circles that are forming within, and you really want them to sort of open out and come together again. Or just come together, if not again.
Can I just throw you something completely out of the blue? Pick it up if you want, or we can go with something else. That's completely your call.
We will find out.
We will find out, So this is completely impromptu. I think most of this conversation is, so teams are emerging out of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And as I speak to my clients, I'm sure you have a similar experience. There's some sort of either restructuring that's happened, or people have left. There are fewer people remaining, have got a slightly different role, are called upon to do slightly different responsibilities. For example, there's a team which was first looking after the profit and loss of different businesses within an organization. Now they're just support functions, and they're going nuts, and they're coming together under a new boss from different places, going completely nuts. So and all this was because of it was brought on by COVID. So COVID happened, and there was lots of layoffs. Business had to really shrink, and of course now they're getting back. So if a team's coming out of COVID, and these are some of the challenges, or I'm sure there are other challenges, resilience could be one, getting back on your feet could be one.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can use applied theater to something like that when it comes to teams and getting people together?
Absolutely. I think, and in fact, I feel theater is such a great way to explore something like that. If one is going through all of this, first of all, I feel like there are many things that happens in the life of an organization.
Mhm.
I think COVID just became something that's applicable to all and unprecedented at the scale of it.
Mhm.
Uh, but my fundamental thing is, if you can get people to come into a room and just acknowledge where they are coming from, create vulnerability, and really relate to each other on the fact that my challenge is not bigger or smaller than anyone else's. The fact is, we've all had challenges and different kinds of challenges.
Mhm.
And if we're able to find a way to work through that vulnerability,
Mhm.
of where do we see ourselves and what are we doing this for?
Mhm.
And these questions are what get explored through the medium of theater. For example, like a simple thing. Uh, there's a client and they wanted this aspect of Bharat, because of COVID, because everything, we're a new function, we sort of come together, and this is in the banking and financial industry. And while there will be larger goals that the organization will give,
Mhm.
I want to create something for the team itself, so that we can sort of own it. And initially, the workshop was pitched to me as a goal setting workshop. And I said, but goal setting is the acronym for goal setting, SMART, OKR. There's so many and they're out there. So why not just pick up one of those and use it? Because I don't think the work is really around goal setting. The work is about unifying these people under these set of circumstances. So what I pitched to the client was, I feel very simple. I said, how about we take a pause, we come together, we open up about and acknowledge how this year has been, the changes it's brought about, some welcome, some not so welcome, and individually think about how we would like to progress as a team. And then theater or expressive arts in that way becomes a psychological in. And I feel different methodologies are different ways of creating a psychological in,
Mhm.
because once you get that in is when you sort of get to the grassroots of what is it that truly you want to work on. And the design that I had pitched was, let's have each person come sort of take a seat, and this obviously is going to be virtual, otherwise I'd love to do it using a different form of theater which gets them to up and about and
Oh, this is
practice.
virtual. Very interesting. So you can also do it virtually. Actually, I had that question somewhere at the back of my mind. So thanks.
Yeah, there
Ah.
are ways to do it, but
Mhm.
now I'm also borrowing a little from expressive arts. There's so many keywords these days, and I wonder why. But uh, the idea is, sit down, take a moment, look at your history, where you're coming from, look where you have to go, and obviously within that history, there will be some good things, and there will be some things that you're not comfortable with within the relationships, the interdependencies, the role, the changes. It could be aspects of compensation. It could even be aspects of the fundamental relationships of how you and I relate to each other as we're going to work together. So, and because I don't want this to be a cerebral process, I usually get people to pick up colors and pens and say, you know what? No words allowed. Just really draw. Think about where you're coming from. What image does that represent? And this is not about being the next Da Vinci or Van Gogh. Your drawing should relate to you, whether it's colors, forms, shapes, stick figures. I don't draw well, but I think I communicate well using really badly drawn stick figures. So it's all right. So whatever you choose to, but just sort of getting your body involved, getting your mind involved, and you create something. And then you bring people together and say, you know what, here's what I've drawn. This is what my journey has been. But here's what I'd like to see if we were
Mhm.
going together. And the beauty about this is, I feel fundamentally, as human beings, we're guided by similar values, not always the same, but similar, of aspiration, security, some of the same things sort of fundamentally tie us together. And when people reveal that, it's such a beautiful space to recognize that, oh, what I am seeking is also what others are seeking.
Mhm.
And then we identify what are some of the top things you want to work on. And
Mhm.
then again, theater becomes a great platform to explore. Okay, if we were to practice this, what would this relationship look like? Or what
So
would
let's
this?
say if they pull out one of the pieces that they want to practice. So this is what we want to practice. Let's say,
Hmm.
more collaboration, more client-centric, leaner business,
Wow.
um, less agile. Nowadays, it's coming to less agile. A lot of people are telling me, we're going to be less agile, more standardized, but less agile. And so anyway, so if they just take out one piece, so now take a choice, just pick up something, whatever, and then how
Customer
do you,
centric.
yeah,
Let's pick up that thing, because I think it's
right,
applicable to everyone.
right,
Ultimately, the organization is placed to be able to serve a customer well.
right.
And we look at, okay, what does it mean to serve a customer well? But instead of talking about it,
So
it'll be
hold, I'm just going to interrupt there. So what you're saying is they've done this painting where we are, I'm
Hmm,
sorry, where we were, where have we come, and the aspirations and fears and all of that. And we've done a round of sharing and people have
yeah.
shared. And then you're saying you pick up where do you want to go, pick up one of those pieces, customer is what you're saying. And now you're going to use applied theater from here on, right?
We could have even used it before to establish what. So the beauty about it, because it's a psychological in, you can sort of plug it into different aspects of it.
What
Uh,
do you mean by a psychological in?
mm, for example, I could pick up a random tarot deck and I'd show it to you, like or a Rorschach
Mm,
over here. I'll show it to you and say, "What do you see, Greg?" And the thing is, what you are going to see is going to be different from anyone but else see.
mm,
But that's not because the card is different,
mm,
because somehow what you're projecting on it,
mm,
that's going to be unique to you,
mm.
which will reveal what are some of the things that are playing on Greg's mind.
Mm, got it. That's a nice one. That's a new one
So
for me. A psychological in. Right.
yeah,
Uh,
so there are various ways of creating psychologicals in, and I feel like applied theater is one of them that really involves the whole being, the body, the psychology, the feelings, the emotions. So much goes into uh, representing what you're trying to. So imagine coming back to customer centricity. It's such an important theme, and so many organizations are looking for how can we, what can we do in order to become better at serving the customer.
mhm,
So the idea is to, okay, let's pick up a few difficult aspects where you feel you're not able to, and let's play those scenes out. And the beauty about a workshop in applied theater is that you've established play space, you've established confidentiality,
mhm,
you've established safety by
mhm,
making sure that within that room, whatever happens, no feedback is really going out. On the efficacy of the workshop and how you feel about it, yes. But what was shared, what was said, no. And we also make sure that we don't have somebody from learning and development just being an observer. So there are
mm,
certain things that go into context to
mm,
really establish that space is safe and sacred. And
mm,
once you've done that successfully, the amount of things that open up in that space is beautiful, because people can role play exactly what is happening in the organization, some of the challenges they're going through, or what stops them from. I've had supply chain issues arise,
mhm,
interdepartmental conflict that is arising when somebody has to go around the process because the process itself is not enabling. For example, here's a particular vendor, I need a service from them, but
mhm,
my billing cycle requires 60 days. This vendor cannot afford that, but I think this is the best vendor and they are going to give me the service that I really need to take to my customer.
mm,
So, and how I have a huge issue with finance, because if I have to make this exception, the amount of rules and processes I have to circumvent, I get it. Processes and everything came into place, obviously for a reason. But
So
little
I'm going to bump in over
yeah,
here.
yeah,
So I get this. So you're saying customer service is a piece and you're picking up the challenges with the customer and so external and internal challenges. To meet the
yeah.
external, there's some internal challenges. I get that.
But
So
play those challenges,
play
not just
this.
talk about. Play them.
So what does play mean?
Get up and live those challenges. So become, how are you going to have that conversation with the vendor? Imagine that interaction taking place. Now
Okay.
you're going to take that interaction, now you have to go convince your finance team. But the beauty is the finance team is not wrong when they are not able to. They are also bound by certain rules. So then be able to respond to the finance perspective. What do I need
Right.
to anticipate if I have to influence? or is there a systemic change that needs to be brought out? Is a process that needs to be amended? So much sort of comes out of it. And the beauty is, because it's a vulnerable space, you're not walking away feeling, yeah, this finance department now, it really makes my job difficult. What you walk away is an understanding of, okay, the finance department's also going through challenges. What do I need to do over here to make it easier? It
So,
doesn't mean that solutions every time.
so Bharat, I want to ask you a couple of things. So I'm going to come to this question second, and I'll give you some time to think about it. The question is that, so therefore, how is this different to a role play? You can just get a finance person in front and uh, get a customer facing person in front and just get them to role play this. So
It's not.
what's the difference? So it's not. Okay, so it's a
It's
role
not.
play.
I think what could be different is how it's set up.
Mhm.
Sometimes, in order to get people out of their mind, rather than
Mhm.
keeping it a real role play, I would even say, okay, look at some of the challenges you're facing.
Mhm.
Caricaturize some of the things that happen in the organization. In
Mhm.
fact, you know what? You can change the context. As far as
Mhm.
I'm concerned, you could be NASA and you're trying to build a rocket ship.
Mm, that's a good
So
one. Yeah, yeah. And yes, I've seen this really help. So you're taking them out of the context. I think. Okay, let me ask you the question. Do you think it's important? I'm getting really nitty gritty here. It's important for the facilitator to give them another frame of reference so that they can get out. A lot of times people can't think of, or do you think just, hey, go figure? What in your experience works best?
I think it would depend on the kind of group that I'm working with.
Mhm.
For example, if I feel that here's a group that where imagination comes easy to them, so
Yeah.
then I will leave it fairly open-ended. I'd say
Typically,
the
what do you
world is
do?
your oyster.
Typically, what do you do? Do you leave it open-ended or?
Some actually I do both,
Oh,
depending on the band of people I'm working with,
yeah.
how open they seem to be, how reserved they seem to be. If they
Let's say
seem
it's a
reserved,
CEO,
then I will
uh,
plant.
CEO,
Or
C-suite.
then I would rather not lead. Then I would like to leave the world is your oyster and see what are they imagining and where are they coming from.
But you would give clear instructions that do not make it um, your organization. Change the frame of reference. Change NASA. Change it to NASA.
I wouldn't say do not. I would say it's not limited to just the organization. You can apply a totally different context.
Okay.
It could be out of this world. So I will plant certain things, but
Nice.
they may not come across as clear
Nice.
perspective, because the challenge over there is if you give sometimes a clear example, a lot
Yeah.
of people then follow suit and use that example as a lead. You don't
Yeah.
want that
Yeah.
either.
No, makes
So
sense.
it
Um,
has to be.
Makes sense. Can you give me a couple of examples? What frame of references have you seen? Like NASA was one. What else?
The reason why I said NASA is
Uh,
because it actually came from my client. Now,
oh, okay.
this is it's a manufacturing company, predominantly manufacturing agriculture equipment,
Yeah.
where tractors say play a huge role.
Okay.
And it was amazing because they were making this rocket prototype slash tractor, and they were talking about the interdepartmental issues where the
Yeah.
people developing the engine have
Yeah.
no idea of what the ultimate or the end product is supposed to look like and how it impacts the performance
Right.
of the tractor slash rocket that comes at the end of it. That
Got
was
it.
hilarious. When we were going
We've also got a few minutes left, just a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to bump in very impolitely. Sorry about that.
through, no, no.
So in a virtual space, how do you make this happen? Are you guys getting these guys to write it out, get them into breakout rooms, write out the scripts? Everybody comes back into a breakout room, and then, so are you just using breakout rooms?
In
How are
a
you getting?
virtual space, rather than focusing on the performance itself, I
Mhm.
would look at mediums that first engage them individually and then sort of in an involved way. For example, rather than get into an aspect of, say a skit or a performance, I would limit it or simplify it to another thing. For example, one great way of exploring is this thing called story spine. It's such a beautiful way of figuring out how do we build a story together. And it's very simple. It's a framework that says once upon a time, dot dot dot, every day, dot dot dot, one day, dot dot dot, and because of that, dot dot dot, until finally dot dot dot, moral of the story is dot dot dot.
Mhm.
Now, just getting people together to sort of come from where they're coming and then finding a way to co-create this story uh, is a great way to experience how do we collaborate.
Nice. Nice. So I'm just envisioning this. You have people in a virtual space, and at random, you're flashing the first line and saying, there's once upon a time, dot, dot, dot. So people say, so one person says something, you can write that down in a chat box.
Yeah.
Somebody says,
but I usually wouldn't get one person to say all of those lines. I get different people plugged in at different places. Yeah. And depending on the size of the group, I will increase some of the lines over there. Or if it's a smaller group, I will decrease some of the lines.
Right. And then how do you debrief it? So you said one person goes once upon a time, maybe a second person adds, okay, let's write it up in a text box. You've ascribed a writer. Then there's somebody else who's going on until.
How about we do this? How about we do this right now?
Okay, nice, nice. Let's go.
So would you like to go with Once Upon a Time? And
sure. Once upon a time, there was a wolf.
Every day, this wolf used to climb a mountain to get a drink of water.
And then, as
one day.
Okay, sorry. So
just for our viewers, we don't have this posted anywhere. So we're going to, there's a little.
So hold on a second. So
one day.
It's, let me write this down. So once upon a time, and then you had, what's the second?
Day.
Every day.
One day.
Then third is one day. And then?
And because of that.
And because of that. And then?
Until finally. Moral of the story is.
Moral of the story. Okay, so.
And we'll alternate lines, okay? So let's see. Let's see how it goes.
So guys watching this, listening to this, this is not made up at all. I mean, it's not scripted at all. We just do it on the fly. Okay, let's see how this goes. Once upon a time, there was Red Riding Hood.
Every day, she used to ride a bicycle and crash into a wall.
One day, she decided to walk.
And because of that, she reached without any cuts and bruises, although she did take a lot of time.
Until she got fed up of walking.
So the moral of the story is all new, pathways or strategies carry their own opportunity cost.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Nice. So now, how would you do this in an organization? Would you say Red Riding Hood, or would you say just something from within the organization? What would you say?
It again depends. But initially, I would like to leave it open-ended. First, just so that people get comfortable with it, I want to be outside of the organization.
Now we take it into, oh, lovely. So now we've got warmed up. Now, I'm a little less hesitant. I'm like, oh God, Bharat's got me in the spot over here. But
see, I'll tell you the psychological in here. Okay. For example, you start now, because this is not scripted or rehearsed, but we are dependent on co-creating the story together for it to sound coherent, at least at the end of it. And now you started with Once Upon a Time, there was Red Riding Hood. I don't know if you're expecting me to say she rides a bicycle and crashes into a wall every day.
Absolutely not.
So when you hear that, what happens to you? What's the first voice that goes inside you?
I'm like, oh shit, what do I say now?
So that's the psychological in. Because often when we're working in organizations, there's a codependency. You know, if I was a sole proprietor, then I have full freedom of writing out the story exactly as I deem fit.
Right.
But when I get into a strategy meeting, I could have everything decided for the next 10 years. Right. But the minute I have my counterparts over there, there is bound to be some kind of information. Somebody will say, oh, no, it crashes into a wall every day. And there are cuts and bruises. So whatever I had decided suddenly needs to be let go of and thought about, okay, here is where I have to collaborate. So that So what is happening to the inner voice, and how do we work with that inner voice to create this openness? And then we take those behaviors and say, okay, now let's take it to an organizational context and say, how can we apply that voice over there and explore that? So that's what I mean by a psychological in. When you get blindsided, when there's a point of view that's opposite yours, when there's a perspective that you don't agree with, yet fundamentally we're in an organization because we have to co-create.
Mm. So I'm looking at this from a debrief perspective. One of the ways you could debrief is before you could explain to people what a psychological in is, and then you can, instead of a facilitator telling you what the psychological in is, you can also have people from the audience. Maybe you can get, if there is a bunch of 20 people, you're getting 5 people to do this and 15 people to observe. And then you're asking the rest of the 50 people, you're giving them notes on the side or whatever else, however you're processing it. And then you're asking them, hey, so what are the psychological ins that you guys came up with? And maybe some questions. What does this tell you? What are some things that got repeated? What are some things that this person was moving away from? And so what does it tell you about person A, B, C, D, E? Which person among A, B, C, D, E really stands out for you? So many places you could take it is how I am looking at it.
There's so many places. One of the simplest ways I start with, okay, you just heard 2 people share a story right now. And in fact, we heard multiple variations. What story worked for you? And why do you think that worked as opposed to something else? Can we sort of reverse engineer it? Why did? And often the stories that will work will say, okay, where this person listened and accommodated to what the other person said.
Right.
I was like, okay. What made them listen and accommodate? Or they didn't have a preconceived notion. They weren't coming from something fixed. They were willing to be influenced, and therefore, so you take those and you go deeper into.
And then you can massage that. You can say, for example, so preconceived notions. What are some of the ones that keep emerging a lot of?
What stop us from listening to somebody else and accommodating?
And if you've done your diagnostic well, then you could connect that diagnostic to this place, and you have something. So if you know in a Monday morning meeting when a particular, let's say, a new product development, I'm just completely making this up, would happening, that governance. What are some of the preconceived notions coming up over there between the support functions and, let's say, client-facing roles? So something like that,
Yes, and it is challenging. It's such a constant reminder. I've just recently started this initiative with a mentor of mine. There are 4 other people associated, so 6 of us, and it's called the Freebirds Collective, and it's essentially but actor training. And because
Freebirds Collective, right?
Yeah. So because it's the 6 of us leading this, so we often get into these conversations. And as a facilitator, I have all this wealth of knowledge, and yet I feel challenged and stumped. So I have to go back into my own, okay, what do I need to do over here? How can I listen more and be accommodative more? Because there are moments when I get triggered. So it is constant practice, but having that awareness of it is a real psychological reinforcement that helps me sort of catch my patterns in the moment.
Great. Bharat, it's been nice speaking to you. This is the first part of Applied Theatre. I'm going to just say maybe we're going to come back with a couple more. I have no idea. We're going to have a chat after this call. And
can't we let the audience decide? Are we supposed to do click here to like, subscribe, something?
Something, yeah, you could do that.
and let us know in the chat if you want more.
Let us know in the comments. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I'm stopping, and here you go. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll be back shortly.